It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. As always, I am Tyler. That's Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412 over on X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're everywhere. Go subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. If you're not watching the shows there, leave a like on the videos. Leave us a comment. Ask some questions if you want us to answer them on the show. Also, follow us wherever you listen to the podcast if you don't watch on YouTube, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcast or prefer to watch them. Anyway, we have several links now. We have quite the catalog, but want to highlight one that we have recently brought up. It's Rocking Around the 412 Year 7. It's our Christmas fundraiser. Normally we have a big old spiel, but I'm not going to do that because it can tend to be pretty long about it. But we've raised a lot of money over the past several years because of a lot of great people to provide Christmas in the local Pittsburgh area. And we want to continue to do that every year. We're going to be raising money now until Christmas time. And so the top link in the description over on the listening platforms and over on YouTube is going to be Rocking Around the 412. So if you want to share that link, that would be great. And if you want to donate, if you're generous enough, that would be awesome as well. The link is there. We have quite the catalog now of links down there. You get some merch of ours. You can get some Game Changers t-shirts. You can see the logo above my head. All sorts of stuff. But Rocking Around the 412 is down there. Really encourage everybody to go check it out.
This is the Pirates show, which means we got 6 games to talk about. Also some transactions. The Pirates were buyers at the trade deadline. When it was all said and done, made quite a few moves. 2 notable ones to talk about. Bryan Cruz coming over from the Miami Marlins, as well as IsiahKiner-Falefa. Definitely a name that I didn't expect. Wasn't even sure that he would be on the market. Didn't hear like a ton of buzz surrounding his name leading up to the trade deadline. Also has next year control, so like the Blue Jays didn't have to move him. That is probably why. They part with Charles McAdoo in that trade, which has been a favorite of Pirates Twitter among the prospects just drafted last year. Really the way that he rose up through the prospect rankings was the Pirates number 29 prospect. So like not a super highly touted quite yet, but the way that he's hitting the minors this year, the way that he's climbing the rankings, certainly a name to watch. So, you know, I would have preferred, obviously, if it was a different prospect going the other way in that one, but you got to give up something to get something. So I still like the trade. I really like IsiahKiner-Falefa, what he can bring in a multitude of spots, can literally play anywhere in the field, and having a really nice season offensively as well. They make a prospect trade, Billy Cook coming to Pittsburgh for right-handed pitcher Patrick Riley. So they deal obviously from the pitching that we've talked about in the minors and Patrick Riley, get Billy Cook back. Well, I think this is interesting. 25 years old. This dude's like right on the cusp of being a major leaguer, the way that a lot of Orioles people have talked about him. Not sure what he's going to turn into at the next level, but I think it's at very least a trading. We've talked about these two teams kind of linking up and making sense as trade partners because of the Pirates' ability to develop pitching, the Orioles' ability to develop hitters. So, you know, maybe this is a trade that, despite it being a prospect for prospect trade, will bear fruit in the very near future. Martin Perez traded from the Pirates. This one makes sense just to move out some salary. You know, you got Bailey Falter back. You're going to have Jared Jones coming back in the very near future. Where did Martin Perez kind of slide in? So it made sense for a team that's looking to get some innings out of a starting pitcher. Martin Perez goes to the Padres. We get back a young pitcher, Ronaldo Jimenez, who's 18 years old, was just signed this year as an international free agent. That Bryan Cruz trade that I mentioned, Garrett Forrester goes the other way, a third baseman who was just drafted last year. And then I'll be honest, no clue how to, I know his last name's Shim, the pitcher that went the other way. I don't know if it's Jung Soo. There's a K on the end of that, which is what, I don't know if it's silent or pronounced, but that's what we're rolling with. And then Nick York for Quinn Priester. Oh, Jalen Beeks as well was the other one for Luis Peralta. Nick York, another prospect coming this way, second baseman, right on the cusp. of the major leagues as well. We'll see how quickly he can get here. I kind of thought he might be somebody that would jump up right away to fill the spot of Nick Gonzalez going on the IL, but that's not going to be the case. He's going to get a couple weeks down there. But yeah, Quinn Priester going to the Red Sox. That was kind of that. There always seems to be one trade the Pirates make that is like you just don't see coming. Like a couple years ago, like Clay Holmes randomly getting traded to the Yankees. No one saw that. Quinn Priester, I feel like, was that one this year. Like, where in the world did that come from?
Right. Yeah, that one definitely came out of left field. When I saw we traded Quinn Priester, or that I didn't immediately know what the return was, and so I thought, okay, is this part of a package trade for somebody else? I mean, surely Quinn Priester wouldn't be the only trade piece in a bigger trade, but ends up being. Would you consider this like a just like a baseball trade, like trading one guy who is kind of like blocked on the other side from coming up with the Red Sox? He doesn't really have a future in their MLB club, at least as of right now. And then Quinn Priester, with the struggles that he's had when he's come up to the MLB level, kind of been a quad A guy for the Pirates. Is this just kind of like a change of scenery for both? I mean, to me, that's kind of what it says, and it gives better opportunity for both of those guys. I like that trade. I think that York could be a great player. Not that I know a ton about him. I'm basically just looking at the raw stats himself, but he seems like he could be someone that brings value to a team. The other two notable trades, Bryan De La Cruz and how do you say the second part of his last name?
IsiahKiner-Falefa.
IsiahKiner-Falefa. Okay. So I like both of those trades for the Pirates. They're definitely not the Pirates trades I was expecting. But as we got closer to the trade deadline day, the targets that we had heard, or at least the names that we had heard thrown around with the Pirates, were going elsewhere, like Jazz Chisholm going to New York. And
although it sounds like when we were scouting the Marlins, it sounds like it was De La Cruz the whole time. Somebody told me that there was like the talk around Chisholm wasn't real. Like there was very little interest or any from the Pirates side in Jazz Chisholm Jr. And we had seen somebody put out there that they were scouting the Marlins and looking at both De La Cruz and Chisholm. Well, clearly, it seems like De La Cruz was their target the whole time. So actually, that was the one that I could see coming. Like the day of, I figured we were getting Bryan De La Cruz or Taylor Ward. I thought it was going to be one of those two.
Yeah, and I like the one we got. And realistically, I know a lot of people will look at some of the stat, like the batting average and everything, and maybe not as high as a lot of people would hope, but I think you have to give everything in perspective. I think when you look at what the Pirates are working with in their outfield, I definitely would say this is an upgrade from what they have with Jack Sawinski, Ji-Hwan Bae. Everybody that they've been throwing out there has been subpar outside of Bryan Reynolds. And so I think this is definitely a much-needed move. It also adds some power to the lineup that has also been lacking for a lot of the year. And then Kiner-Falefa, I think that is a good player to have on really any team. He's someone that can move around the diamond. He's someone that gives quality defense. And he's somebody that, I mean, maybe he's batting out of his pants right now, and this is higher than what his actual average is going to be with the Pirates. But it's someone that provides a quality bat coming in right now to Pittsburgh. It's something that we definitely needed. We talk about how really 5 through 9 or 6 through 9, the Pirates are working with hardly anything when it comes to the offense of their lineup. And so adding a couple of guys that can add some pop and can add some average up in your lineup, that's the only thing that I could have asked for going into this trade deadline. Sure, I talked all season how I want Brett Rooker. Obviously, they don't get him. Did he even get moved? I don't think anybody got him, did they? No, he didn't even get moved.
Same with Luis Robert. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of guys.
Yeah, so obviously those things didn't happen. But did the Pirates add offense? Yes, they definitely did. They added power, they added average, and they added guys that you're going to go into your lineup and night in and night out, and you're not going to question why are they still here. We've been doing that for too long, and somehow, some way, I mean, really, we know the way. It's because of the pitching staff. The Pirates are still keeping their heads above water. They're staying afloat right now. But adding these guys into the lineup, especially getting into the deep days of August and September, this is going to keep your heads above water and potentially push you up even further, because you're not going to just be relying on batters 1 through 4 to win you the baseball games. You're going to get batters 7, 8, 9 that can still provide value to what you're doing. And I got to give Ben Cherington credit. He did a lot more than I thought he was going to do. And I will say that completely honestly. The vibes going into trade deadline day were not good for me. I did not know what was going to happen. I figured a move or two might be done, but I didn't know what was going out. I didn't know what was going to be returning. And seeing some names come off the board in the days prior, the panic meter was coming up a little bit on what Ben Cherington was going to do. I'm pleasantly surprised. Still think he's a crap GM, but I got to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, it just adds length to the lineup. You mentioned you throw Bryan De La Cruz and IsiahKiner-Falefa in there, and you can hit guys like Brian Hayes lower in the lineup where he should be. You can hit, Rowdy Tellez or Connor Joe lower in the lineup. You can move down. I don't know if you want to move down Joey Bart right now with what he's provided. I mean, one of the better stories of the year is what Joey Bart has provided for the Pirates. Don't know where they'd be behind the plate without him. But yeah, it just deepens the group as a whole. And I mentioned this yesterday, and we can talk about yesterday's game. Obviously, they get out to a 4-0 lead, and then things went south. But I mentioned this yesterday during the game, and I think it still holds true. It still holds water for the long-term picture of this. The monkey's off the back now. Like, you don't have any guys on this team that are worried. They might be worried about playing time, but they're not worried about getting moved on the roster now. And largely the guys that are part of this core group, how good do you think they got to feel knowing that they got added to as opposed to subtracted from? Like, that just has to carry weight in terms of the way that they're going to go into this second half, if you will. I know that there's much more games that have been played than haven't been played, but yeah, like, from this point forward, how good do they have to feel? There's just got to be some mojo, I feel like, in the locker room, knowing that the team did believe in you enough to go get some reinforcements and add to the group, when it's a group that has seen its like subtraction for the better part of their tenures. Finally, they feel like the front office has bought into them.
Yeah, there's only one guy on the team right now that knows what it feels like to have the Pirates bye when they're playing in August, and that's Andrew McCutchen. He's the only guy that 10 years ago knows what this is like. And the fact that we're there again, I'm sure it feels great if you're a guy like Bryan Reynolds. And not only just Bryan Reynolds and these other hitters, I'm sure it feels great if you're a pitching staff and the rotation, knowing that they're trying to improve the offense behind you. Because I know they're not going to say anything bad about their teammates, but I'm sure it is very frustrating whenever you are Paul Skeens or you're Mitch Keller or your Bailey Falter, and because of whether it be poor defensive play or poor offense, more often than not, you are struggling to be able to even compete in the game because you're not going to get any run support. And so I'm sure from just pitching mentality, this shows that not only are they trying to improve this team and they believe in you, but they want to help you out as pitchers. And when it comes to the guys, the core guys of this team, the Bryan Reynolds, the Andrew McCutchens, the Brian Hayes defensively, they're showing that they want to be able to add to your team like you had just mentioned. And that's something that I don't think can be overstated enough, because that, I think, can change a mentality of a franchise. It can change the mentality of a locker room, and it can change how these guys think about themselves and think about them as a collective group. And I know it's only a couple of guys you're adding, and obviously stuff still happens to happen on the field. But whenever you are someone that is in the lineup and hey, we're pretty good, we just need a couple tweaks, and your GM does it for you, that's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously what they are bringing in terms of on the field, but I just feel like it is important to bring up what they are also adding just in terms of the mentality. I feel like that's a game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. I'm wearing one right now. Time of recording this as well. The one they sent me for my birthday. The kid, Ken Griffey Jr. I'll also be wearing one tomorrow when I go to Guardians and Orioles in Cleveland, Adley Rutschman. And then I'll be wearing my Rhea Ripley Game Changers tee on Saturday for SummerSlam. Literally, like I got like 30 shirts now. This is my wardrobe. All I rep is Game Changers. Shout out to Game Changers. Save yourself $10. Code AT412. Let's talk about the recent stretch, though. They've only played one game since the trade deadline, obviously. Saw Bryan Cruz in that game, couple hits. One of the guys that actually contributed offensively in this game. Did not see, we're just going to call him IKF. That's what everybody calls him. So we'll just go with IKF from now on. Did not see him in this series working his way back from injury. His rehab was supposed to end on Tuesday, which was when he got traded. So it was like kind of hard to make that happen, his last rehab thing. So I don't know. He said potentially he would be able to go in this homestand, as early as Friday. So we'll see if he has played or will about to be playing tonight, depending on when you guys are watching or listening to this. But I'm excited to see how they just line everything up. Because again, I think this just deepens the group. I think it makes sense for him to just slot in right away at second base with no Nick Gonzalez. I guess they could use him in the outfield, just depending on what they want to do with matchups and stuff like that. But Michael A. Taylor's actually been swinging a pretty good stick right now. So we'll see how they want to construct the lineup. But let's talk about the series that did just happen. Let's go back all the way to this Arizona series, because this road trip got off to a rough start. And honestly, after last Saturday, I was kind of wondering if they would even buy at the deadline, because I was wondering, okay, say they get swept in this series. If they would have lost on Sunday as well, they had to come back to win that game. Resilient group. We saw that in that last game and during the Houston series. I said, if they were as good as they are resilient, we'd really be cooking with something here. But anyways, they lose the first two of that series to Arizona, 4-3 and then 9-5. Bounce back and win a crazy game in extras on Sunday. What were your takeaways? I know you just said that you agree about the even wondering if they were going to buy, but what was your takeaway from that series in general?
The Diamondback series, I just thought it is terrible timing for all of this to happen. That was my main takeaway. Is like, this could not be happening at a worse time.
They had Reynolds on the bereavement list, and then Gonzalez pulls his groin in the same series.
It was a series of unfortunate events for the Pirates, all leading up to this series, and that's why I can't say the series was awful outside of them losing two games. Like, obviously that was bad, but from what the Pirates did on the field, it's not as bad as what I guess it could have been, looking at what they were missing from their lineup. And was it game one against Arizona what Skeens pitched, and
Ortiz pitched in the first game of the series.
Ortiz pitched. I completely forget whenever Skeens pitches sometimes. But I just that whole series, it just felt like it was all stacking up, and it was just a series of unfortunate events, like I said, for the Pirates. And I thought this was all part of Ben Sherrington's master plan to get out of having to buy at the deadline.
Master plan.
It was the master plan of, okay, they need to get further away from their goal in order to take less pressure off of me. So I have an excuse as to why we're not buying in a couple days. Obviously, that did not happen, and they ended up winning the last game of that series and then winning the first two in Houston. But still, it was uncanny timing for that realistic to happen, because of how close everybody is too with the wild card. I mean, right now the Pirates are still 2.5 games out of a wild card spot, but there's still like 5 or 6 teams all fighting for those few spots. And even the gap got even closer because Atlanta started to lose games.
Yeah.
And so
I was just say too, you could say how many games they're back, but their next 2 series are against the Diamondbacks and Padres. Like, the ground's there to be made up right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking at the next series against the Diamondbacks doesn't make me feel good that they just lost 2 out of 3 to these guys, but I'm hoping with their additions and Having Reynolds back, that changes things, and it being in Pittsburgh. But man, it did not feel good.
I mean,
for
did you
me.
see the pitchers in the series though? Is what, like, it's lined up differently. So we're going to have, I think that they announced Ortiz, Keller, Skeens for the series. So unless that's changed, that was originally what they had put out.
That would be ideal.
Yeah. So, then you could say, what does that mean for the Padres the following series? But yeah. They put out this graphic yesterday, this weekend at PNC Park. Ortiz, Keller, Skeens, right order. Yep.
Well, that makes me feel better.
And Jared Jones is working his way back too, which, I hate when people do that whole, this internal addition is basically like acquiring a player at the deadline, because that's a bunch of baloney. But getting Jared Jones back, and also maybe this injury takes away the need to have him shut down at some point in September because of the time that he did miss and wasn't throwing. I mean, that would be huge now if he's able to just go on through the rest of the season and hopefully continue to pitch the way that he was. I mean, that's not like a guarantee either, but hopefully if he's able to do so with what you're getting now from Luis Ortiz, Bailey Falter still solid, at the bottom of the rotation. I think that they still have that group pitching wise that can get it done. Do they have everything else? We'll see. I do want to talk about this series in Houston more. They win the first 2 games of this series, and this is where everybody is now really feeling good about things. Last night, they jump out to a 4-0 lead, and then it all goes downhill from there. Very rarely can you, and I'm not blaming just O'Neal Cruz, but at the same time, even the fact that they literally did nothing offensively after the 3rd inning, everything else that happened in that game, they still win that game, if not individually with what O'Neal Cruz did, the errors that he had in the field. And somebody asked a question that I wanted to address early here, because it's related to O'Neal Cruz and benching him, the idea of doing so. Sean said, what would you do about the recent O'Neal Cruz struggles both at the plate and in the field? Bench him, move him, something else? Play through it. This is always the answer with O'Neal Cruz. Sometimes this happens, right? I mean, it's frustrating as a fan. It's frustrating as an observer to say that. But this is who he is at times. Every once in a while, something like this pop. Maybe not to this degree. Maybe more so like throwing errors at short, as opposed to whatever in the world he was doing trying to go play left field last night. Sometimes you'll see the arm go a little haywire at times, and I feel like that has popped up a little bit too, which is like, that's probably on us. What is it, like 2 of the last 3 shows we mentioned how much better he's looked defensively this year? So
yeah,
you could probably blame this very podcast for O'Neal Cruz having a little bit of a regression defensively over the last couple weeks. But the bat, it was really just that last series in Houston, right? I mean, he looked fine in the Diamondback series. I thought he was still good. If you expand his stats out over the last 15 days, still an 891 OPS, still a 583 slugging, which both of those numbers, the highest of anybody with at least 30 at-bats in that time frame. The only guys that, like, Yasmani Grandal has 12 at bats in the time, and he's OPS 940, 357 on base, same batting average of 250. But really, you're talking about one series of offensive and defensive struggles, I think, and that's this Houston series where it was just like really bad, and you just hope we got through it. Hopefully, we wash it away. And that's the end of that. It does suck to not have gotten that sweep in Houston, especially because you got out to the 4-0 lead. Otherwise, yep. I think that you just chalk it up as you won a series in Houston. And you started a guy that no one probably even heard of, or the majority of the fan base didn't even know in that game. And he pitched really well. And it's a shame that he wasn't able to get a win in that one because of O'Neal's defense in that game. But I think in most cases, you probably just say, hey, we won a series and that was the end of it. But it's how it happened, how we got to that loss last night, that is so frustrating. And to be quite honest with you, it's still with me right now. Like, man, that one really sucked to lose. Like, some games just, there's more weight to them than others. And I think last night was one of those.
I agree with that. I mean, the Houston series as a whole, really good overall. Being able to go to Houston, one of the best teams in the league still, and win a series like that is something that we could have not asked much more of. Taking 2 out of 3 against Houston, any of us would have signed up for that. It's just the hindsight after the fact, knowing about how that last game played out. Also, shout out to Michael A. Taylor in this series.
Yeah.
Freaking, you put up the picture of
imagine
him
if
as Hank Aaron playing in
Yeah.
Houston.
Imagine if he has like a Rowdy type resurgence now from this point forward. I'm not saying it's going to happen or I'm predicting it to happen.
That would be good because it takes care of an outfield position and a guy that can play defensively every day. If he has a resurgence like Rowdy Tellez, you don't have to worry about who's playing center field every single night. I think that would be best case scenario for the Pirates. Is it going to happen? Different story. But yeah, man, this last loss to Houston, I agree with you. It stings. Like not all losses are created equally, and that was one that is going to sting a little bit more. And if not for those errors, that's the thing you got to look back to. If not for those errors, the Pirates get a sweep in Houston. But I agree with you on Cruz. That's something you got to play through. Sitting him does nothing except take a guy away from your lineup, because who are you going to be replacing him with? Are they going to be better offensively? And sure, some of the lumps that you can get sometimes defensively, are they going to make up for the fact that you're taking Oneil Cruz out of that lineup? Absolutely not. And I think that trading him, I saw people saying trade Oneil Cruz online, and I think that's a ridiculous idea. It would be way too early if that's the decision they ultimately came to at some point. But it's not even a thought that has ever even crossed my mind to trade Oneil Cruz.
Here's the thing too, even about the defense, right? Shout out to Jim Rosati, Northside Notch, part of North Shore 9 over there. But he posted the graphic today. You look at his defensive numbers, it's not that far off from like Bo Bichette, Corey Seager. He's actually ahead of Paul DeJong. Like, those are guys that you live with. Like, he's a shortstop. People are trying to make the argument that Oneil Cruz shouldn't be at short. His biggest issue is with fly balls. Yeah, let's put him in the outfield. What does that solve? Like, I don't understand what people are trying to. If you want to make the argument at some point, DH, right? Because you're not going to have him anywhere in the field. Maybe we get to that point, but we're certainly not there now. The defensive metrics are fine. People are overreacting here.
I agree with that. And I think ultimately, if you do get to a point where he is playing DH, if you can get defensively good enough to do that, then that would be an ideal role. But he also needs to hit better if he's going to be a DH too. He needs to hit more consistently if you're going to be a DH. Because I mean, another guy, man. I do feel like he had again. I feel like most of the issues we're talking about were in this Houston series. He had a couple bombs in Arizona, and I feel like he's hitting lefties better than he ever has. I feel like he's kind of started to turn a page. It's a shame that we just saw this, and now it brings up like these, long-term projection type takes and these takes that people are digging up from the last couple of years about Oneil Cruz. I think he's a different player right now than even we saw last year. Obviously, was injured and didn't get to see a ton of him, but I don't know. I feel like the adjustments that coming along slowly, but they're there. I agree with that. One that I still, you can't take him out of the lineup, but at the same time drives me nuts still. And we mentioned him a lot. Bryan Hayes bat. I don't think that you can rely on him to ever come through with a hit.
Well, he had the big hit in the finale against Arizona in extras, 2 RBI single, which they ended up needing. But generally speaking, I agree. But like, that's why I said, I put this take out there too, and I got a lot of backlash for it. It's funny to me that people view Bryan Hayes' contract as some like anchor of the franchise, because, and I say anchor in a poor way, not because somebody replied like, "What are you talking about? He's not an anchor for this team," thinking I meant like he's like a pillar. When I'm saying anchor, I'm saying no, like weighing down the franchise. A $70 million contract making less than $9 million per year should not be an anchor to the franchise. That's more of an indictment of the franchise than it is the player, because for any other team, Bryan Hayes would just be a really good defensive third baseman, like really, really good defensive third baseman that you just stick as the 8th or 9th hitter on your team and you live with that. And that guy is still worth that money because of what he brings. in that spot, because it's the Pirates who don't pay anybody, and he actually did get a decent sized contract. People view this contract as so much worse than it actually is. And will the Pirates like eat that contract if things go too bad? His back continues to give him issues. Maybe he does regress defensively and doesn't improve offensively. Probably not, and that's when it becomes an anchor. But again, to me, more of an indictment on Bob Nutting in this organization than it is Bryan Hayes.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I don't really bat an eye about his contract. When I think about Bryan Hayes, his contract doesn't even come to my mind. It's just his batting and his on-field, what he does on the field itself. His contract means nothing to me. He's just a player that got extended by the Pirates, which is great. I mean, I'm glad they were rewarding players, but at the same time, ignoring the contract, he needs to get better offensively. I mean, with a team like the Pirates who rely so much on every single player in their lineup, and we talk about how valuable it is to have guys be able to contribute offensively up and down the lineup and not just in 3 or 4 spots. He's got to be one of those guys, not because of the contract he has, just because the Pirates depend on it if they want to get to the postseason. And if they want to make a run in the postseason, they're going to have to depend on Bryan Hayes and others, not just him, but Bryan Hayes is a major one just because of the name notoriety, the position he plays. The defense is great, but you're going to need to bat above 200 if you want to get this team where you want it to be. It's a team game, and so I'm singling out Bryan in this conversation, but I'm really talking about the team as a whole and itself. And in a way, Bryan Hayes is kind of what this team has been for an entire season. Let's compare his defense to the pitching staff. The pitching staff's been great. Bryan's defense has been great. It's the offense that has been struggling the entire season. And that's why sometimes it's so frustrating to watch this team because of the offense. Sometimes it's so frustrating to watch Bryan Hayes because of his offense. So in reality, he's just a individual player that represents the entire team for how this season is playing out. I'm just hoping with time and getting into the spot in August, he continues to get better. Like, imagine last year at how he finished last season. If he can turn into that player in August and September, where can this team be?
Yeah, I just feel like his back is, I don't want to use the word cooked, but like we're going to have this thing pop up a lot. Like, this is obviously an issue that's going to linger with
Tiger
him.
Woods of baseball.
Yeah, there you go. But again, because it's the Pirates, I don't think that we ever get to a point where they just totally cut bait with that contract. Smitty from around the 412 here. And while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. Yeah, I don't know what the hell that was. Like, why there was like a lag there with the video playing. I pressed it immediately. But anyway, I don't know that I see that happening either. So I think it just kind of is what it is. Like, they just kind of got to eat that, realize what he is defensively, try to keep him as healthy as possible, and hopefully you acquire enough good offensive talent where you can bury him like 7, 8, 9, somewhere within there in the lineup.
Okay, so with the new additions and where we're looking at with this team, if you are Derek Shelton, what are you putting out there on the team? Not knowing exactly how, like Bryan De La Cruz, I know he had a couple hits the other night, but how he and IKF are going to work out offensively and everything. And we still yet to be seen. But based off of what the expectations are for these players, what we know from the players we've had all season, how would you construct the lineup and where would you stick these guys?
That's what I'm doing on my phone right now. I'll be honest. I told you this before. I don't know that I'm married to the idea of McCutchen as the leadoff hitter in all situations. What about seeing how Kiner-Falefa does in the leadoff spot? He's the only other guy. He's the one that they acquired that I think could make sense to try there. And I don't know that there's anybody else really that's worth trying there. I think most of the lineup pretty much stays the same, just guys shifting down. I'd probably throw Bryan De La Cruz, at least against lefties, as the cleanup guy in the 4 spot. I think that worked out pretty well. Against righties, I don't know. Maybe I throw Tellez at 4, De La Cruz at 5, Bard at 6, somewhere those 3 guys in those 3 spots against righties. And maybe McCutcheon leads off against lefties. Maybe IKF against righties. I don't know. There's some toying around that's going to have to go there, but I would say let's go with that. We'll go with primarily most days 1 and 4 would be where I'm hitting them.
Okay. I agree with that. I'm not like married to the idea of Kutch leading off either. I think he's still one that needs to be in your lineup as the DH more often than not, but where he bats necessarily, not sold on that. I think that the addition of these 2 guys gives the Pirates the luxury of having Brian Hayes bat in the 7 or 8 spot if they wanted to. They can push that down the lineup. And I think, and I mentioned this when we were talking about Michael A. Taylor, I think the outfield that you saw in, coincidentally enough, the game they lost against Houston is the outfield that I think the Pirates would ideally roll with the entirety of the rest of the season. Now, obviously, you're going to platoon some guys in here or there, but like once you get to the playoffs and you get shorter with your lineup and you're pretty much rolling the same guys every single day, if they get to that point, I think that ideally your best lineup when it comes to what they can do offensively mixed with the defense is probably going to be Bryan Reynolds, Bryan De La Cruz, and Michael A. Taylor if he continues. If Michael A. regresses to what he was doing for a while where he was barely batting 100, that's a different story. But I think ideally that's what they want to roll with.
And I don't know that this is going to be the case. We've talked about offensive struggles for the majority of the season, but say that those bats that they got do provide what we potentially think that they could for this lineup, not just for themselves, but also like more lineup protection for everybody, not being able to pitch around certain guys the way that people have in the past because Pirates haven't had that many legit hitters. Maybe you can afford to have, Michael A. Taylor pretty much all glove center fielder because maybe the hitting actually turns into somewhat of a strength for this club. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not predicting it to happen. Just throwing the scenario out there where that does. I really like what Gary brought up here. This isn't necessarily a question, but it's absolutely true, and I've seen it firsthand. Talk about how competitive baseball changes the camp buzz around the Steelers a bit. Yeah, I know that we talk every week about the Steelers. We're certainly excited about training camp and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not like most years where we're like, can we just please get the training camp so that's what we can talk about instead of the Pirates? We are still very much invested and excited to talk about the Pirates every single week. And I think a lot of people in the city are just glad that we flipped the calendar to August now, and we're still very much in the thick of things.
Yeah, as of recording, it's August 1st. Pirates are fighting for a wild card spot. I don't think we can ask for a better position to be in if you go back to March and say, where do we want this team to be come August 1st? I think that everybody would have signed up for the position we're in. And yeah, it does change how we think about the Steelers, not necessarily us individually and maybe not everybody out there listening, but it does change the sports dynamic. You're not as longing for football as much as you are if your June and July are just filled with miserable baseball, because the Pirates are actually winning and they have been a winning team. They haven't been below 500 since July 13th, and now it's August 1st. That's a good thing. And I don't know the last time they've had a stretch of like almost 3 weeks of above 500 baseball. It's probably last April, I guess, is technically the start to the season that they had technically was probably be the case. But I think that it does change things. And yeah, I'm still excited for Steelers, but it doesn't feel like we have just been dying for football. Now, obviously, there's going to be people that out there that don't care about the Pirates and have been dying for football ever since the Super Bowl ended. We get it. But also, it's nice to have competitive baseball this time of year, because as much as I love the Steelers and I want it to be football season again, there's just something about the Pirates being competitive that just feels different than if the Steelers or the Penguins are competitive. And it's probably just because we haven't gotten it a lot in our lives. That's probably the main source, is that when the Pirates are competitive, that is a rare thing. Like Smitty and I have been alive for over 29 years now, and each of us have only seen 4 winning seasons. And sometimes we forget about that 4th winning season. In
2018 was so random. Yeah.
That 2018 was random year. They didn't make playoffs, but they had a winning season. And then you got 13 through 15. That's our glory days for Pirates baseball. And that's probably why there's something to me whenever the Pirates are competitive. It's just a different buzz than I get with the other teams.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think that applies. I don't want to say across the city, because certainly I think that this is a football town first and foremost, and we're never going to argue that or try to push back against that. But when the baseball team here is good, people do back it. So I just hope that this continues. I'm excited about it. I don't know whether to bring this one up on the Pirates show or the Steelers show, because it's literally not related to either. It's just a question, not related to sports at all, but I do appreciate it. Craig says, what's your favorite Italian dish? Do you have an answer for this off the cuff?
Yeah, chicken marsala, which is
that's up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like chicken marsala a lot. I like mushrooms, so that is a good dish for me. I think that if I go to an Italian restaurant, that's probably what I'm looking for more often than not, especially if I'm back home in Beaver and I go to Mario's on 3rd Street in downtown Beaver. Love their chicken marsala. They use the bow tie noodles. It's good. It's something else.
Man, I'm a big penne vodka guy, so that's certainly up there too. I love Alfredo sauce too. I'll be honest, like just straight like red sauce, I have trouble with these days. Acid reflux is killing me, man. Like
you sound like
I'm even on. Like I take medication for it every single day. One of my prescriptions is for acid reflux. It still bothers me.
Wow.
Whether it's pizza or pasta with. So I rarely eat red sauce anymore. Like even with like a lot of times I'll just do like butter and garlic salt on noodles, like maybe some shrimp thrown in with angel hair or something like that. So I rarely eat red sauce anymore, to be quite honest with you. If it's like chicken parmesan, I'll literally just use very little red sauce on the chicken before putting the of course stubby provolone cheese. But yeah, I would say penne vodka and probably chicken Alfredo. If it's Alfredo sauce, it's probably gonna have chicken in it for me. Yeah, I'm between those two.
Yeah, there's one that I make homemade that has like a crushed red pepper, like not actual like crushed pepper that you can buy in like a little bottle. I mean, like you get red peppers, and then I use like a food processor, and I make the own sauce with it. I love that one, but I think it's a copycat one that my dad got the recipe of a while ago. I'm not sure what dish it is from where, but it's a good one. I also like you mentioned shrimp, and it just perked my mind. Shrimp Alfredo. I like shrimp Alfredo a lot, and any type of Alfredo. It's very generic. And I honestly, I'm with you too. Growing up, I have never been a huge fan of like red sauce when it comes to Italian food. That's why I find myself going to something like chicken marsala or going to something with Alfredo. I've never been a huge fan of it. Like spaghetti, love the meatballs, but I've never been a huge fan of spaghetti just with red sauce by itself.
Yeah, I think it's gotta be like Yolanda's by me, really good. Like anything Italian, though, to be quite honest with you. And their pizza's obviously fantastic, which not sure if the watchers or listeners of the show know, but yeah, Yolanda's is fantastic. And then Armstrong's. If you're familiar, you should be familiar with Armstrong's too. But anybody watching or listening to this, their vodka sauce, unbelievable. So, shout out Craig. Appreciate the question. That was not at all related to the Pittsburgh Pirates, but thanks for that. Anything else?
Well, like I said, if you drop a comment in the YouTube or over on Twitter, we will answer it. It doesn't matter if it's Pittsburgh sports related or not. We'll answer any question you guys have.
Well, hold on. I don't know about anything. There's certain topics that I'd rather not discuss on this podcast, but for the most part, yes, certainly. Get yourself some merch. just recently sent out some to our guy, Landon Roberts. So shout out to Haley, Everything Custom Designs, link in the description for that. But you know what? I'll just tell you about them. Need a custom t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler? Stop what you're doing. Don't go anywhere else. Check out the link in the description. Everything Custom Designs. Our friend Haley Wagner, small business. She can do all that for you. She even does around the 412 merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees, bunch of different stuff. I even got a tumbler from her as well. So go check out the link in the description. Goes directly to her Facebook page. All of her stuff can be found there. Again, Everything Custom Designs. Haley Wagner. She does great work. Can't recommend her enough. Go check it out. Be sure to go check that out. As I mentioned, this is August now. Football season starts next month. Pretty soon, long sleeves and hoodies will need to be part of your wardrobe. So get a jump on it. Go grab some around the 412 merch from her. We got shorts from DC4L Customs. The link in the description for that as well. Don't have any more hats. We sold out of the hats. Shout out to everybody that got one of those. Gonna definitely have to put in a second order. People love the designs. Didn't necessarily expect it. That's why I only got 15 off the jump, because I was like, I don't want to be stuck with a bunch of these if people don't like them. I got 15. I had 35 people say that they wanted a hat. So definitely got to get more. Two of the designs. People weren't in love with one of them. I personally could do with or without it as well. So we'll see going forward if I even get more of those ones. But certainly the circular logo was a big hit. So we'll have to get a bunch more of those ones. I think that's it, though. Be sure to check out everything in the description. Rocking Around the 412 Year 7 launched last month. Already raised over $600. Every single penny goes directly to providing Christmas in its entirety to children in the 724 and 412 area codes. That includes partnering up with the East Rochester Salvation Army, their Angel Tree program that they do every single year. Super excited to really get the ball rolling with that. I would say September is when things really ramp up, and we're only a month away now that it's August 1st. So excited for that to take place as well. Be sure to follow us everywhere at Around the 412. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here on YouTube. Hit us in the comments. As Tyler said, if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, it doesn't matter. Search Around the 412. You'll find us there. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. And yeah, that's it. This has been the Around the 412 Pirates Show. We'll see you guys next time.